Joining us now, Republican Congressman, 5th District, Virginia. That's the south side of Virginia, Charlottesville on south through Danville. Denver Riggleman. Congressman Riggleman, great to have you with us, sir.
Great to be here.
Okay, lots to talk about, short amount of time. Let's first react to what Mike Lee said that the Senate Intel briefing was insulting to him. He thought it was lacking of pertinent information, and he blasted the White House for that. The House briefing, did you have a similar take or not?
No, and it's probably based on the context that I have because I actually did this mission, and I always find it interesting that people have confirmation bias based on what they think they know or they don't know. It's an amazing thing to me that we had Soleimani with al-Muhandis, and I think Mike, and I like Mike Lee, but he doesn't understand who al-Muhandis is, just doesn't know. And al-Muhandis had 3 jobs: primary advisor to Soleimani. He was deputy head of the Popular Mobilization Forces and the leader of Kataib Hezbollah. And you had Soleimani with the command and control epicenter, al-Muhandis, after meeting with multiple leaders in the region. We had the intel. It is compelling. And if anybody knew the context of this conflict and the fact that the Obama administration labeled him a terrorist and he was on Iraqi soil, I think Mike Lee needs to delve into Article 2 of the Constitution. Also, and I think also the AUMF, the War Powers Act. And if he has an issue, I think we talk about AUMF. We talk about these things. But I hope we have the same kind of, I see a lot of hostility out there when President Obama was also doing strikes with UAVs and UASs. So let's be a little bit honest here. So if you have an agenda, let's be honest about what your agenda is. Are you running for president? Is there something you're looking at? And I like Senator Lee, but I disagree with him.
Okay, so the briefing that you got for the House from the White House on the killing, the taking out of General Qasem Soleimani, were you satisfied with it?
Yes. I mean, but, the thing is I already knew why, and I did this mission in 2006, 2007. I tracked Iranian resupply of IEDs that killed Americans, specifically during the high time, right, in 2006, 2007, when hostilities were starting to ramp up a little bit again. And
yes.
And directly after, the AUMF was in action, when the war on terror is at full-blown, capacity, there are no statutes of limitations on killing Americans. And I think these individuals need to realize that. And if you hear my voice getting pretty steely, I would debate that with anybody, including any so-called constitutional experts, because I tracked those people. I went against Quds. I went against Iranian resupply of IEDs. The thing is, we have to keep this conversation on a level. And the second part of this, what he failed to say, is the entire intelligence report is actually available if he just wants to go read it.
All right, so he didn't. It sounds like he didn't bother to do that.
Let's talk. It's time for press clips now, right? You got to get out in the press and make sure that you have the appropriate amount of righteous indignation.
Right, and so the potentially, you're saying some of these people that are doing this can advance their political agendas or careers. Okay, so let's.
Well,
right?
I'm saying he could actually have righteous indignation, but just go read the report first, or get more information. Don't and plus maybe talk to experts in the field and see what's actually happening over there before you get angry.
All right, so let's go back to the genesis of this. Did you support what the president did in taking out Qasem Soleimani?
Yes.
Why?
Why? Because there was an imminent threat that with compelling evidence that those troops were going to be killed, or that American troops could be killed based on mission planning. Like I said before, when you look at the SMGs, John, the Shia militia groups, there's over 60,000 of them, and al-Muhandis was the center of the command and control for them, which means they were planning something. Absolutely. There was no reason for Soleimani to be in Iraq with al-Muhandis, who was there during the embassy attack. They had already killed Americans, a legitimate terrorist target, and honestly, Soleimani messed up. Don't kill Americans and then walk around in Iraq, right around Route Irish, not thinking that we're going to strike at you as a legitimate terrorist target since the Obama administration.
Okay, so that makes sense. Let's get to the Iranian response. We knew they had to respond. Khamenei Denver Riggleman, as you know, they have to respond to their hardliners in the Republican Guard, in the IRGC, I think it is, Iranian Republican Guard Corps. We knew there was going to be a response, but it almost seemed like they didn't want any casualties, they didn't want any damage, they just want to save face and move on. Some of people like me believe that's what happened, why nothing was struck. Do you share that view, or do you think they just missed?
Well, they're not real good if they miss with Shahab 3s or no Dong variants or the type of missiles that they have completely. The fact that they still, listen, we didn't have a fantastic early warning system, and we weren't aware, of intel that told us those strikes were going to happen. I won't specifically say it's back channeling, but I got to be very careful as I tell you this. But there was also some evidence, I would say, that Iran was a little bit worried about killing any American troops after what happened to Soleimani and al-Muhandis, and also the public affairs officer for the PMF-2. I think people need to realize that. So I do believe there was a bit of a de-escalatory, I would say, motive to where the rockets actually landed, the timing of the rockets, and the geographic proximity of the rockets.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're live at the 2020 Richmond, Virginia General Assembly in Glenn Davis's office. House of Delegates member Virginia Beach. We're with Denver Riggleman, Republican Congressman, 5th District, Virginia South Side. Congressman, let's get to the president's speech yesterday, 8 minutes long. I have to tell you, I thought it was his best moment, so I'll just go on the record with that. I thought Charlottesville was the president's worst moment. I thought this 8-minute speech yesterday was President Trump's best moment so far. What did you think of his speech, and why?
I think there was a lot of messaging in that speech, and I thought it was great. Specifically how he started with Iran will never have a nuclear weapon.
Right.
He set the standards for any future negotiation with that. But he also, in his speech, and I hope people really paid attention to it because there was a lot of work that went into that, was, listen, we want you to be part of the sort of the brotherhood of nations, Iran. So let's talk. If you want to continue doing this and going after Americans, it's going to be very bad for you. But if you are willing to stop the nonsense, if you're willing to become part of what we do, right, which is law-abiding or rule of law nations, we'll talk to you. Because right now, Iran is number one in state-sponsored terrorism, and they've used proxies throughout regions to kill thousands of people. And when I say thousands, tens of thousands, right? So let's be honest here. I mean, you're talking about a country that's state-sponsored terrorism and has conducted operations in Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Africa, right? So this is what they've done for for 40 years, is use state-sponsored terrorism to further their hegemonic pursuits, and they have to stop doing that immediately. There's no more Mr. Nice Guy, and at this point, the United States is willing, really, to execute a policy of peace through strength.
Okay, so Congressman Riggleman, where do we go from here?
Well, there's going to be my guess is if Iran can stop some of their autonomous proxies from hitting, there's going to be I think there's going to be certain, I would say, behind the scenes back channeling by countries, like the Swiss, on escalation, because I don't believe we have a whole lot of direct contact with the Iranian government right now. But I think there's a lot of work going on in the State Department through some of our individuals to try to reach out to actually get a dialogue with Iran. Simultaneously, we'll be on heightened alert. We certainly have every single area targeted if they do anything in the region, which is their biggest fear, is taking out their entire early warning system and parts of their infrastructure, things of that nature. So right now, I think there's a cooling down period for a couple days as diplomatic solutions are engaged.
Let me read a text here from Mike in Cape Charles, Virginia. He says, all Mike Lee accomplished was taking his name off any Supreme Court consideration by President Trump. But then he goes on to say, I love Denver Riggleman's passion to kill these terrorists. I was in Afghanistan flying drones in 2003. I know him well. Mike P., Cape Charles. Got a little love there, Denver.
Well, that's because, Yeah, no, okay, go ahead. Sorry, John.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean, military, people have short memories. Just like, I think I'm one of the only 2001 9/11 veterans left in Congress. And people forget that I've worked this mission. I've forgotten more about what's happening in the counterterrorism space than most people have ever known. That's the first thing. The second thing, when you see veterans writing in, they understand loss of life. They've been there. So for me to have lawyers telling me that they somehow know the context and the years of intel on these specific targets based on their own authorizations of force, and all of a sudden you see righteous indignation, they need to actually go to the battlefield. And how about this? How about you go to the thousands that have been affected by IEDs and go tell them we shouldn't have killed Soleimani, because Soleimani is just a terrorist in a uniform. That's all he is. He's al-Baghdadi in a uniform. He's Osama bin Laden in a uniform. Just because you put somebody in a uniform doesn't mean all of a sudden they get the terrorist moniker taken away from them, right? And that's the issue that we have, and that's why you have the passion from people who fought for this country and took the oath to the Constitution. So don't lecture me, and don't lecture those military individuals who are fighting for our country that somehow that Article 2 or Article 1, and you're arguing about these things when there is a real political thing here and a real life thing here for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that Americans are trying to bring to the world. So that's just the way it is. And if people don't like it, well, you know what they can do, John, right? They can vote for me or not vote for me, but there is no way that I'm going to go against the law and allow a terrorist to run amok in Iraq planning to kill Americans. It's just not going to happen on my watch.
I have been calling for a new vote on a new AUMF since I've been in the air for 9 years. Every congressman and senator at some point in my tenure that I've had on, I've asked them about getting a new AUMF and replacing what we had in 2001. And they're all going to do it. To their credit, one of the big advocates was my dear friend Walter Jones, God rest his soul, he died, and Tim Kaine. Nancy Pelosi between 2006 and 2010 wouldn't bring it to the floor. John Boehner wouldn't bring it to the floor. Paul Ryan wouldn't bring it to the floor. Barbara Lee Jackson got it in appropriations. Ryan told Scott Taylor he would bring it to the floor. He lied to him, and they deep sixed it in rules at midnight. Now, all of a sudden, and Pelosi didn't bring it to the floor in 2019. Now, all of a sudden, it's the hottest issue we have. Is this the height of hypocrisy or what?
Height of hypocrisy. I don't remember the screaming from the left when President Obama was firing missiles into wedding ceremonies. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Number one, we're calling this an assassination. This was a targeted killing based on somebody on the target list, a proper terrorist combatant, let me tell you. But yeah, and you haven't heard Nancy Pelosi talking about the AUMF, have you? She's been talking about impeachment, right? And I think having the AUMF discussion is absolutely appropriate. It's non-controversial to re-look at the AUMF after 18, 19 years. Absolutely non-controversial. We should be looking at the AUMF. I'm all for it, and Republicans were talking about it. But under the current AUMF, which everybody in Congress before me has supported or didn't fight or voted for, I've been here 1 year, and all of a sudden the people who've been here 10 years or 12 years or 6 years or 8 years are having a problem with it. Well, why didn't you do something about it when you were in Congress there?
Thank you.
What are you doing? Now you're all of a sudden screaming based on some kind of political maneuver? When we just killed a guy who took out I was there. So please do not lecture me on constitutional duties and rights when you have failed in everything you were supposed to do, and then you're pointing the finger at the president after Congress granted him that authority. To me, it's the height of hypocrisy. It's why people despise politicians. They despise the corruption. They despise the righteous indignation and the fact that everybody is trying for clickbait right now. You need workhorses, not show horses, and you need people who've never done this before. I am in the perfect position to bring this to light. Yes, two things here. Were we right to strike him? Yes. Are we right to relook at the AUMF? Yes. We can do both of those.
Sure. And my point is, we've been calling for a debate on AUMF. I don't know if I don't care if you pass it or not. I'm just asking for a debate. Nobody would even get it out of committee or take it to the floor. And we had promise after promise dating back to Pelosi's first tenure as Speaker, 2007 to 2010. She didn't do it. Boehner didn't do it. Ryan didn't do it. And now she doesn't do it again. Even though they promised they would do it, they never even had the debate. Now all of a sudden, it's the most critical thing we have because they hate Trump. I mean, the whole thing is sick. You talk about the swamp, the hypocrisy, the nonsense that goes on there. Where was she for 2007 through 2010, 2019? Why didn't she go to Paul Ryan, demand it? Nobody would get it out of committee. They didn't want to debate it. You know why? They didn't want to go on the record one way or the other when one of these things came up. Now, all of a sudden, it's the most important thing we have. Unbelievable.
Killing Soleimani is more important than killing Osama bin Laden. And that's why America should be celebrating today. Because Soleimani has been doing this longer, and he has I would love to sit down and give somebody a briefing on Soleimani and al-Muhandis and the Shia militia groups and the Popular Mobilization Forces. And the thing is that Soleimani just had more control over a vast array of resources and proxies that have killed so many more people than Osama bin Laden. And people need to realize that. It's like the argument between Hitler and Stalin. Mm-hmm. People say, well, Hitler, awful, just vile evil. Stalin, vile evil. How do you compare the two? You take them both out. And that's the thing, with Soleimani, bin Laden, Baghdadi, Zarqawi. I mean, if you go down the line, these people are vile, vicious cowards. And Soleimani, just because he's in a uniform, doesn't mean there's a terrorist underneath, those little leaves.
Denver Riggleman, I got to wrap. We're out of time. I really appreciate your candor. Keep fighting for what you believe in, sir. And look, as you said, you've got to call this out, and you're not going to be lectured by lawyers without the information that you actually lived. So thank you for being with us, sir.
Thank you, sir, and you have a great day.